Have you ever felt like you needed to Batista bomb somebody because they called your action figures dolls? If you have ever given somebody an atomic wedgie for damaging your like mint on card Marvel Legends action figure, well then you're definitely at the right place. Although I will say, if you're an action figure collector, you're probably the one getting atomic wedgies. But anyways, let's get serious here. In today's video, I actually wanted to talk about something, and I know most of you guys are looking at the thumbnail and just assuming like, is this dude really about to bash Jada Toys? Well, let me explain myself. Okay, yes, I do believe it's a very sad situation, but not necessarily for the reasons that a lot of you guys are going to assume here. I do believe that it's a very dire situation, and it is sad. It is really depressing to see Jada Toys kind of spiral down this path, and I think there are a lot of different factors being at play here. Obviously, I think a lot of it is their own doing, but a lot of it has to do with things that are outside of their control, like, you know, budgetary constraints, and now the whole tariff situation and things getting more expensive, inflation, so on and so forth. I think all of that has definitely played a role, but ultimately, I think what it boils down to is Jada Toys doesn't really have a big license under their belt. Like, if you're looking at Mattel, they have wrestling action figures. If you're looking at Hasbro, they have the Joes, they have the Transformers line, they have Marvel Legends, they have Black Series. McFarlane has Spawn. They have a few video games here and there, but the two big ones are the Spawn universe and then the DC line as a whole. Jada Toys doesn't really have that. Okay, let's be brutally honest. As good as their action figures are, and I'm not saying that they're not, I've often, made entire videos and said it before on this channel that Jada Toys, there have been stretches where they're the best manufacturer out there. They're absolutely killing it. Amazing articulation, amazing designs. There are some issues here and there, but they're just so minor that you can overlook them at that what used to be a $25 price point for their lines. Whether it was the Street Fighter line, which has been absolutely phenomenal, the new Mega Man line, simplistic, yes, but I think it fits a modern aesthetic and still has some of the newer tech and some of the newer articulation schemes. Same thing with the Scooby-Doo line. It appeals to an older generation, people that grew up watching Scooby-Doo, and it's kind of an obscure line, I guess, to an extent. I mean, not to say that Scooby-Doo doesn't have like a gigantic following, but it's rare to see them in action figure form unless there's like a really big live action project attached to it. They just picked up the Cyberpunk universe in action figure form, which I guess was kind of big for like a short period of time. I think the release was huge, and then that particular franchise went into a downward spiral. And then obviously the biggest announcement was that they were going to pick up the Invincible universe. And I think I'll make a separate video where I kind of break down some of the newer announcements, because there were 3 figures announced at SDCC. But this video isn't about that. I'm essentially going to maybe bash Jada Toys, but not for not making great action figures, because I do believe that they're making great collectibles. I actually forgot to mention their cereal mascots as well as the Monsters universe. They actually had some great collectibles that actually ended up on Ross, which is another big point of emphasis. Their stuff just isn't selling, and I think one of the bigger problems is the licenses that they're picking up, the rights that they're picking up for action figure manufacturing just don't have the following that a lot of the other big licenses have. And I know a lot of people have floated around the idea that it's because they just don't have the means necessary to be able to carry out a really big license. But and honestly, I'm not even sure what license they could acquire that could bring them above water and make them one of the main lines in the action figure community. But I think they're swirling right now. They're sinking, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, these universes that they're picking up just don't sell. They just don't fly off the shelves. I mean, we just recently had some Mega Man action figures from Jada Toys, which, as I said, they're absolutely phenomenal action figures, but we just saw some of them on clearance. I think it was like Walmart, and then eventually we saw them at Amazon for like more than 50% off. I want to say like 65% off. They were about like $9 to $10. I think the original retail price point on those Mega Man action figures is $24.99. The Jada Toys, I think, have been pretty consistent. They're staying close, or I should say relatively close to the original retail price point. We've seen them kind of spike up and then come back down to earth, but for the most part, even if you find them for under retail, it's only like a couple of bucks here and there. I've seen some Amazon listings for some of these action figures. I think maybe Cammy, maybe Chun-Li. I believe even Dhalsim was kind of slightly on sale. I think they were about like $19 to $20, which isn't a huge discount. I mean, $5, but still, you know, it's an action figure line that just doesn't sell out. I'm not sure if it's because Jada Toys continues to fulfill their orders long after the first initial release, or if it's because they overproduce their collectibles and then they just oversaturate the market, or they're just not able to fulfill the first few orders, and so they have to consistently go back in to production for a lot of these figures. But the list goes on and on. Those Monster Universe action figures, I think we saw them at Ross on clearance for like $7 to $8, which is an absolute travesty. And then the cereal mascots we've seen for as low as like $6 to $7. I think they were pretty consistently selling at like $11.99, $12, which is about 50% off. But still, you just wouldn't expect such a great manufacturer to have so many clearance deals happening for a lot of lines simultaneously. I'm almost going to go out on a limb here and say that eventually that Cyberpunk universe is also going to go on sale. And God knows that I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan. I grew up watching it, coming home from school, you know, watching Scooby-Doo. I know the lyrics like the back of my hand. I remember the great laugh tracks. I remember the original soundtrack. It was just an absolutely phenomenal show. I've even watched some of the newer series or some of the newer seasons from Scooby-Doo. I've watched some of the crossover movies. They're absolutely phenomenal. But an action figure line for Scooby-Doo at a $30 price point, I'm questioning that choice. I'm questioning that decision, especially from Jada Toys. They make some great collectibles. They make some absolutely banger action figures. Why go down this road of picking up these licenses that nobody's willing to touch? There's a reason that Jada Toys was able to acquire Scooby-Doo. That's because, well, nobody's really making Scooby-Doo action figures at this moment. There were some Scooby-Doo action figures like when the Scoob film came out. I want to say that was what, like 6-7 years ago, and even then they weren't like highly articulated or highly detailed action figures. It was mostly meant, they were collectibles mostly meant for children. The cereal mascots, the Chester Cheetah, all those are great collectibles in and of themselves. But Jada Toys is essentially making them collector level collectibles, and I think that's just not a great idea. Like, I'm not saying don't make some of those obscure lines from time to time. Almost every manufacturer does it, but you have to stick with something that is big, that is iconic, that is going to fly off the shelves, because at the end of the day, it's business, right? I mean, if you're constantly making action figures that are obscure and are not well known, they're going to consistently end up on clearance, and you're just not only are you not going to be able to make a crazy amount of profit, but you're also going to get tagged with, you know, a really bad public perception. I think as time goes by, people are not going to remember the specifics. They're not going to necessarily remember the collectibles. All they're going to remember growing up is how Jada Toys was always on sale, how nobody was buying them. You would rarely find them at Walmart or Target. They were always hitting, like, you know, stores like Ross or Ollie's and so on and so forth. And I just don't want Jada Toys to be stuck with that reputation. I'm not sure exactly what the solution here is, aside from picking up a really big license, something that people have been clamoring for years. I've often made the lists. I think I have like at least 2 different videos where I talk about potential franchises that would perfectly fit Jada Toys. I know some people floated out that, you know, they would love to see the Marvel Legends line from Jada Toys or the DC line, but as I mentioned previously, it's been widely accepted that it's a very small company, and they're not going to be able to handle a license that's too big. But also, I think they should handle something that's a little bit more well-known, something that people are going to jump on. The only real line here that I think is consistently relevant has to be the Street Fighter line, but even that particular line isn't selling great. Like, they rarely sell out of those collectibles, and I know people don't think that everything should be selling out. They like the idea of something always being in stock and always being available, but at the same time, you still want to create that buzz. And when there's like a store exclusive that is for like the Marvel Legends line, it usually creates buzz. It gets people talking. There are content creators that create entire videos just on that one particular collectible that's sold out. So it's definitely a smart idea to have a balance there. Have stuff that's going to consistently sell out, and then maybe have other collectibles that are going to sit on store shelves and people are going to, you know, come back around, maybe pick it up on sale from time to time. but you need to have more bangers, you need to have more heaters, and honestly, I just don't see that happening consistently enough. It's really sad because I've already said this probably a couple of times now, but Jada Toys, to me, there are stretches where they are the best action figure manufacturer out there, and unfortunately, there are not enough people that are interested in the franchises. They could care less about the source material, and honestly, it's really unfortunate. It's really sad. Hopefully they, moving forward, they're able to pick up more really big IPs to add to their library. Invincible was a really good step forward, but that even goes to show how, even though Invincible is an absolute hype train, I haven't seen that many content creators picking up this particular story and running with it, talking about Invincible, talking about the new offerings from Jada Toys. It feels like there have been some videos here and there, but just not as extensive as, say, like a new Marvel Legends line or a new DC Multiverse line or a new Wrestlers line from Mattel. I just feel like they're missing that go-to franchise, and hopefully they're able to find it very soon, because as I said before, I think they're getting lost in the shuffle and people are just completely forgetting about them. But as always, this is just my personal opinion, my personal take. I'm very curious to see what all of you guys have to say. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you guys still love Jada Toys? Would you like to see them pick up on the more beloved franchises rather than, some of this like retro obscure stuff? As always, make sure to stay tuned. We're uploading on a daily basis. Sometimes it's action figure news, it may be a review, it may be some action figure hunting, and other times it's just going to be all out ranting like we did today. So stay safe out there, enjoy the hobby, pose your action figures, play around with them, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.